Hey folks, this is a section where we have a guest, and today's guest I have been planning on having on the show for I don't know how long, and every time I run into him he's like, are you going to ever have me? And I'm like, yeah, and then I don't know what happens. His schedule, my schedule, the world happens, something. So I am so pleased to tell you and to bring to you Dr. Robert Young, who is a practicing psychiatrist out of Pittsford, New York. But the thing that he is involved in an organization that I have the utmost respect for, which is the Doctors for Responsible Gun Ownership, or DRGO.us. And so you need to go check that site out, see if you've got a doctor that is interested, and share that site. But hey, Robert Young, thanks for joining us.
Happy to be here, Amanda. As I said, anytime you want me, I'll be ready. I'll be able.
I'm telling you, I was like, okay, I got his card. I'm gonna reach out, and then I couldn't find the darn thing. So I'm like, Rob, reach out, get a hold of him, come back. Let's connect this. You know, it's the life of a not organized person.
Yeah, I got a hold of him, but I thought he's probably going to think I'm crazy because I don't really know any details or nothing. I'm like, Amanda says to get a hold of you and have you get a hold of her. So
that's the way we roll.
You did your part as a dutiful partner, Rob. Yes.
That was the extent of his efforts. It's really funny because he's like, I don't know. I just show up and there's a guest there, and then I ask questions. That's how that works with us.
Hey,
but,
I'm just like a regular listener. I'm learning as I go. Only I got access to ask questions while it's happening. Instead of just screaming at the radio like everybody else does.
Exactly. So what I wanted to talk about was I actually wanted to talk about something that had rolled out in 2018, and that it's being rehashed, and it's kind of coming up again. And I don't believe that it got as much press as it should have then, and I'm hoping that it's going to see or get a little bit more this time. And that is the study that was done that shows that it has a definitive data set that says concealed carry and the act of having concealed carry in a state does not increase violent crime. And so can you talk to us about that a little bit?
Sure. This was a very important study, and I agree it didn't get the general coverage it deserved, although it was widely enough covered in the 2A community because of how well it made the point that it made. I would not expect it to be covered in the mass media very well because it arrives at exactly the opposite conclusion that they always want to see and is generally produced by their favored researchers. But Dr. Mark Hamill and his group presented this at the Congress of the American College of Surgeons in October 2018. It was published in their journal in January of this year, and I was very pleased to be a reviewer for the journal for this paper, and actually one other that came out of this group. And I was very, very impressed by this paper, by the way it was done, which is far, far better than the way everything else was done. I don't want to get deeply into the weeds, except that this aspect of evaluating things is what DRGO can be very, very useful with, because most people don't really understand that research isn't just published and becomes received wisdom the next day. It has the research itself, the methods, the assumptions, the way the analysis is done, the statistics, it all has to be evaluated to decide whether it actually reaches any kind of valid conclusion. And you'd be surprised at how many published papers, even after peer review in the medical sciences, do not provide truly reliable data. And that's been the case on this subject for many years. But Dr. Hamill and his group did it right. They looked over 30 years of records. They looked at all the states in the Union, all 50 of them. They looked at changes in laws, generally from more restrictive to less restrictive, because that thankfully has been the story about permitting concealed carry for the last 30 years. And they looked at the changes over time as the laws changed. And that's a good way to do it, too. Now, by contrast, other work that's been done on this subject has looked at this state or that state or several states. And they have not only cherry-picked the subject states, but by using something called the case study method, they actually pick their own controls. A control is the example you're using that did not change, that you're comparing the study variable to. Study variable being the place, or in this case, the place in which change occurred, and you want to see the relative effect of the change versus the control state, say, where no change took place. That's fine as far as it goes, but all it is one point in time, and because you can choose the state you're studying as well as you can decide which other state you consider to be similar enough to be matchable, the researcher inherently is going to cherry pick. There's no way around that. So on several bases, that's just not, it's a way to maybe develop some ideas about what direction things might be going, but it's not a way to show anything definitive about the way the nation is going. So these guys did it right. They looked at all 50 states. They looked at it over 30 years. They looked at it as whatever state changed as it changed. They looked at violent crime rates. They looked at homicide rates as they changed through those 30 years. And we all know that generally those rates have dropped with time anyway, which is a good story in itself. But then the question is, looking at, and the point about the controls is, if you're going to look at states, the only state that is a good control for that state is that state. It's what was happening before, and particularly the trend, not just what happened in 1 year before, versus the trend after it changed, not just the next year, because 1 year tells you nothing about the overall time course of things. There have been studies that did that too, which is just as ridiculous. In fact, the true conclusions from those, I'm thinking about studies about Missouri and Connecticut, were actually opposite from what was published by the anti-gun press. We can talk about that later if you
Okay. Well, and that sort of makes sense. So let me draw.
This is very, very good. Yeah,
Let me draw a comparable to our listeners so that they get it. Because when you say, if you're just looking at a data point from the year before, the year after, think about it like you're looking at the graph for the Dow Jones. And even though the trend is upward, it's a jaggedy picture that you're seeing where it's up, it's down, it's up, it's down, and the overall average is heading upwards. So that's the same thing that's happening here, where there may be a few more or a few less, depending. And if you just cherry pick a peak or a valley, then you're not really getting a good picture.
By just getting one year out of it, you may see it's declining, but in reality, it's still increasing.
Or vice versa. And so in this study, the cool part about it is not only the 30 years, they use 14 different variables, including the carry restrictions. They also did unemployment, poverty rates, all the different crimes. And so there was a lot of different stuff. So they were looking at trends as this overall scheme of them.
This is 1 year. They started 1 year before Florida
passed their concealed carry.
Right. So that was like one of the very first
concealed carry states. And they ended up with 21,500 different data points that they put into the study. So statistically, That's a huge amount of data to be able to look at.
Absolutely.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and that's a good example about the Dow Jones and how you can't make assumptions based on one day's change or even a month's change. That's absolutely right. For example, again, the anti-gun press has made lots of noise about it. I think it was either 2015 and 16 or 16 and 17 when the nation's homicide rate went up. And so they're pointing out how, oh my God.
I'm going to need you to hang on a minute. We're going to come right back to it. I've got to take a hard stop break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the points that you've got to make, the studies and what it's doing, and then we're going to go into talking about drgo.us a little more.
Honest citizens like you protect themselves every day. We talk about it every week on the Self-Defense Gun Stories podcast. Were these gun owners lucky, or did they have a plan? How should we defend the people we love? We discuss recent examples on the Self-Defense Gun Stories podcast. Put us in your pocket.
Hi, I'm Janelle Westrom, owner of Davenport Guns and Davenport Shooting Club. At Davenport Guns, we do so much more than sell firearms. We advocate for increased personal safety and security, not just for you, but your whole family and community. Go to davenportguns.com to see our online inventory and browse videos, articles, and things we just find entertaining. Sign up for our newsletter to learn more.
This is Cheryl Todd of Gun Freedom Radio, and I am proud to join Amanda Suffolcool and all the 50 women, one from each state, in our grassroots efforts to protect the Second Amendment as delegates of the DC Project. Grassroots organizations like the DC Project run on donations, so please consider donating to our GoFundMe/DC Project to keep the promise of freedom alive.
Ladies, ever wish you could find a brand that understood the difference between feminine and functional? A brand that didn't make you choose between looking good and looking tough. Check out offhandgear.com, a brand designed by a gun girl/mom that closed the gap to give you feminine, durable, functional gear. Offhandgear.com, the brand that gets you.
Okay, you ask yourself, who is this Realize Firearms Awareness Coalition, and what do they do? Realize Firearms Awareness Coalition is a not-for-profit group based in Portage County, registered as a 501c3, and organized to educate about the historical intent of the Second Amendment to the Constitution of the United States of America, to share knowledge, to enable citizens to accurately relate and defend aspects of the U.S. Constitution, to enhance public awareness and support for responsible gun ownership, and to emphasize firearms education for women who facilitate the transmittal of constitutional awareness and gun ownership to succeeding generations. How do they intend to do that? By talking to you all and having you talk back, by hosting educational summits and events. So tune in, listen, and participate. RealizeFAC.com.
Shotgun with Charlie.
I'm Charlie Cook from Riding Shotgun with Charlie. Conversations in the car about gun safety, freedoms, and even a few laughs. Imagine you're in the back seat listening to an intimate chat with me and my passengers as we drive all around the country. Listen, watch, and subscribe to the Riding Shotgun with Charlie YouTube channel and podcast.
Had a dirty day? Grunt Goat Tactical Soaps, made from fresh goat's milk and organic oils that detoxify, clean, and restore moisture to skin, will get you ready for your next adventure. These unique soaps are handcrafted in the Blue Ridge Mountains and shipped to anywhere in the U.S. Visit SillyBillyGoatFarm.com for their full line of Grunt Goat Tactical Soaps. That's
Okay, we are back, and our guest is Dr. Robert Young from... and we've lost him. So hopefully I will be able to make a reconnection with him. But we want to talk to Dr. Robert Young from Doctors for Responsible Gun Ownership. So it's drgo.us. And so some of the stuff about the Doctors for Responsible Gun Ownership is the fact that you and I have all seen where your doctor has been told that he needs to ask, do you have a gun in your house?
Ask if you have a gun in your house and if you feel safe. And
are you in fear for your life, or do you feel safe? Is there anybody that's all of those kind of things? I have to tell you that the time that I wrecked my motorcycle, I broke my foot. We were in New York State, and so I'm in getting X-rays. My husband's there. It was already a hot mess. Just 2 motorcycles, 500 miles away from home, And then they say to me, "Do you feel safe at home?" And my husband is in the room, and he looks at them and he's like, "Well, why shouldn't she? She's the one with all the guns." And I'm like, "That's not the place for this conversation, dear. That is not the place for this conversation." But each one of us takes exception when our doctors ask us, do you have guns, and how many guns, and all of that kind of stuff. Well, these guys fight back, and so part of what they do is they are looking for gun-friendly doctors to partner with them and to be involved so that you can actually look it up and say, is there any gun-friendly doctors in my community? Will you connect me with one?
I say my doctor, when I go in there, he wants to know about different hollow points and all kinds of different things. So,
we were doing a whole conversation on stance with my doctor the one day. He's like, okay, if I'm holding my gun, here's that. Okay, so Dr. Young, you're back with us. So sorry to cut you off.
Hi, I got back. Found you again.
Yeah, the brakes never wait for anybody. They really don't.
Oh no. Sure.
So let's go back into this study and the point that you were making when I so rudely cut you off.
No, not at all. But Amanda, how much time do we have actually? I really don't know. So I to base myself.
We're going to run right up to the top of the hour, so we're going to go to about 58. So we've got about 7 minutes.
All right, so that's it for me. Okay, fine. Well, let me just say 2 things about what I was talking about. So the anti-gun press made a lot about the blip in homicides recently. Well, it's dropped again since then. And again, if you look at 2 years, it's like it goes up like, 30, 40%? It's horrible. But over time, over the last 30 years, that's just a blip. And it's headed back down a little bit. And that's what you have to look at. And that's actually the reality of what's happened with greater concealed carry. Now, on Dr. Hamill's study, people have, on our side, have raised the question, well, it doesn't show that, they don't say that they've proven that greater freedom in concealed carry is associated with less and less homicide and violence. Well, we know that in society that's true. The one has increased, the other has decreased. But if you're studying these 2 factors properly, scientifically, the question is always whether you can isolate these factors from every other factor possible. Well, you can't, not even with 14 of them. But it is possible to prove what we call a null hypothesis, that there is no effect, rather than there is a cause and effect, which is where most studies go wrong. They say there's some kind of correlation there that must be the cause. No way. But it is enough for our purposes scientifically to be able to prove that, in fact, the enhancement and greater freedom of carrying concealed in all 50 states over 30 years is not at all associated with any change in the rates of homicide and violent crime. That we can prove, and that's enough, because then the question is, well, why would you bother passing laws to restrict it when it isn't even relevant? That's the scientific conclusion. So for people who are disappointed that it didn't prove that it causes drops in violent crime and homicide. Well, it still may be true that that's happened, but that's not something you can prove in a scientific way. There's too many other factors to consider.
Right. How can you prove that you were going to get killed today, but you didn't? You know, that's sort of where some of that is. And an interesting part about this study, as compared to some of the others, is that there is a correlation to a rise in crime and a rise in the application of concealed carry licenses. And so some people have inappropriately tagged that to say one is the cause and the other is the effect, when it may actually be the other way around. That if crime in your community picks up, you then take charge of your own safety and the actions associated with that.
Right. Also, very commonly, when you talk about homicides, no one separates justified homicides from criminal homicides. Mm-hmm. It's very, very hard to, because most homicides even are labeled as potential criminal homicides by the arresting, charging police. Most justified homicides end up being found that way later by the DA, or unfortunately perhaps through a trial. So our numbers on justified homicides are low compared to the reality of them. And so how much of that is the benefit of increased concealed carry? Good question, and an important factor.
Right, and it sure is important to the person who had the gun, who used the gun, and it survived to go through the court case, because had they not, the situation would have been completely different for them, or could have been completely different for them. So the fact that they were around to have to argue their case and say that it wasn't their fault is really, because guess what? You get to be there.
That's right. That's the important start. Absolutely, yeah. So,
okay, so we've got a couple minutes. Let's talk about
DRGO.
Yeah, we get 2 minutes. So let's roll out a little bit about DRGO.
Okay. Well, you described what we are and what we do, but you alluded to a very important project where we've been engaged in for 2 to 3 years now. Too many people are being bullied by their healthcare professionals to tell them about their gun possession, and then even worse, they too often get lectured by these healthcare professionals as if they know anything about how to handle and store guns safely. There are some very strict, restrictive ideas out there about what gun safety is that bear no relation to what an educated, responsible, even trained individual already knows about gun safety. Gun safety is about how you handle them, not about how you don't have them, which is the preferred advice for most of the medical profession organizations. Not necessarily most doctors, I can tell you. Many more doctors are laissez-faire about that, or pro-2A, than you hear about, because the medical media does not want to acknowledge that. So we want to hook up people looking for doctors who are sympathetic to responsible gun ownership and the Second Amendment. And all you have to do is go to 2adoc.com. You can get there from our homepage, drgo.us. And we invite doctors to sign up as doctors who will accept referrals, and we invite potential patients to sign up so that we can tell them who is that way in their vicinity.
That's really pretty cool. So, folks, if you've got a pro-gun doctor that you have the same conversations with that we do, then send them to drgo.us and get them to sign up. Dr. Young, I want to thank you very much. We're going to hit a hard stop again. Thank you very much for your time. And, folks, check out drgo.us.